Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to the channel. This is part 2 of the wide body install video on the 2017 STI ORAM wide body kit. So last night I got the kit pretty much, exactly where I wanted it. So this video is going to cover trimming and sanding and getting it ready for paint. So I have this front bumper piece on the car, and as you can see there are some minor gaps in between where the front bumper and this piece sits. So basically I'm going to just trim some sections in here to reduce that gap. For this particular car we've decided to use like a rubber gasket in between the holes here. And that rubber gasket essentially just fills in space so you have less of a gap. I've already started to sand and trim these pieces. So this video is just going to cover the rest of that process. So basically, the reason I like to trim, especially when we're using the gasket, I mean, I really don't have to. This is pretty good. But if I trim a little of this and make a little more space between the bumper and the body kit, it's going to take a lot of tension out of the kit, and the kit itself with paint is going to be a lot less likely to shift or to crack. Alright, so the first thing you're going to do is just get an ordinary permanent marker or any kind of writing utensil that you can use to mark the kit, and basically you're just going to mark the areas that you are going to be sanding. That way when you take it off the car you kind of have an idea of what you're going to be sanding to. And I think I've said before in prior videos, prior subjects, do it slowly, do it very carefully. You could definitely take an angle grinder to this and, take off all the material you need to right away. But if you take off too much, it's a lot harder to add material back than it is to remove a little material. So for this instance, I'm going to be doing most of the sanding by hand, just to give you an idea of how little material you take off each time to get the measurement you want. Alright, so then you just use these specialized pliers to take these fasteners out. And the whole piece comes off pretty easily. And you want to get a hand on the body kit before you take the last piece out, because it will fall and it could potentially crack on the ground. And so this piece, you can already see I've started to sand and trim. I did do this with a more aggressive grinder, just because I know I've done this before. I know how much I'm going to need to take off more or less. I needed to clear this carbon lip here because there was a little bit of touching. So I took the edge off. I don't know if that's easy to see, but yeah, I took a lot of this edge off so that would clear, and a little bit of the back side there. I still have to do that on the other side, so you'll be able to check that out. I also took a little bit of this top section off so that it would sit flush with the fender piece. I'm going to be using one of these foam sanding pads. This is 180 grit, so it's pretty abrasive. It's going to cut through that fiberglass pretty easily, and like I said, we're going to take this pretty slow. That way we don't have to add material, which is what I don't want to do. I really don't like body work at all, so I don't want to have to add fiberglass. This by hand should work pretty well. Alright, so this is what the piece looks like. This is the section I have to sand, and you're just going to take this block and kind of go to work. Okay, so I can already start to see a recession forming. I don't know if that's visible on the camera, but you can see the line is no longer straight. It kind of has an indentation to it. So we're going to take this and mount it to the car and see if what we're doing is matching up. Alright, and just to kind of test fit, I'm not going to put the fasteners back in, but as you can see, this bumper line right here is where we're having the issue of the fiberglass kind of flexing, and a lot of tension in that area. So when I line it up, it's already much better, and the gap is essentially gone. I'm going to hit this real quickly, probably take another tiny bit of material off, and it should fit perfectly. Alright, so we got it fastened with the Clecos, and as you can see, just from that tiny bit of material I took off, this area fits significantly better. So the gap is pretty much 90% gone. There's a lot less tension in this area. So like I said, you don't need to take a lot of material. Do this very slowly, and it'll save yourself a lot of work in the long run. The reason I like to sand these and get it to fit a little better is to remove tension from this panel, and that's just going to reduce the chance of this cracking or failing. So I'm going to go ahead and add this to the pile of pieces that needs to be wet sanded, and that's kind of the next step. So as you can see, and just kind of from the shipping and transportation and handling process, the gel coat on this fiberglass can get some small scratches. There's one right there, and you can feel that with your finger. And some small imperfections on the edges here. So I'm going to go ahead and wet sand these down and get this piece ready for paint. Alright, so I already have the driver's side piece of the kit, front fender piece, kind of doing the same process. You can kind of see I've already started to sand it and gotten most of the imperfections out. I mean, there's still some surface scratches that you can see in there. But basically what I'm looking for is stuff that I could fill with my fingers. So there's the front bumper piece there, and we're going to go ahead and get this started. Alright, so the first step is going to be to clean these. I just use alcohol and a clean rag. I can't find the alcohol, though. It's around here somewhere. Alright, so I got the alcohol, just spray alcohol. And essentially you just want to wipe it down so that there's no dirt or rocks or residue that's going to get inside of that gel coat and make worse scratches than what you started with. So just give it a good wipe down with a clean rag, and you can kind of see the surface a little better as well and feel those scratches a little better. So for this I'm going to be using the same type of pad as we did to trim it, but this is 2000 grit and it's going to be wet sanded, and just kind of go on those areas I felt imperfections and get them taken care of. Alright, so the fender piece is finished. I'm pretty happy with the surface. There's not really any rough scratches or unevenness anymore. It feels really great. So I'm going to mount this to the car and mark some measurements for where I'm going to be cutting more of the fender off. So yeah, this is going back on the car along with the other piece, and mark some things, and while the car is at paint, or while these pieces are at paint, I'm going to cut the fenders and bumper. Alright, so I got everything mocked up. I don't even have all the fasteners in, and I mean, you can just tell this is, you really can't ask for more. After a little bit of shaving, I even got the front bumper piece and front fender piece to basically look OEM. I mean, there's just so little space. It looks amazing. I really am super happy with it. So yeah, what I wanted to do is just put this up so I could remind myself to cut all this out so that you don't see that when the kit is finally mounted to the car. This car had flares before, so it's been cut previously, and there's a good section that's been cut. Unfortunately, this was not part of that section. So again, you're just going to take your handy King Kong sized marker, and I'm just going to draw on this $40,000 car, more or less, what I want to cut off. That's just a guideline. I'm definitely going to be cutting a lot more than that. I'll probably cut from where this carbon fiber piece goes up into the bumper and then just shave a little bit of this metal that was missed before. So yeah, that's what it should look like if you did it correctly. This piece in particular is ready to go to paint. I'm going to be dropping it off tomorrow and hopefully get it back really soon. Alright, so I'm currently trimming the front front passenger bumper piece, this corner that hits the carbon fiber, and I am going to unfortunately have to use an angle grinder just to take off material quickly. So in this case, you know, you do want to get a mask. You don't really want to be breathing in fiberglass. So I'm going to hit this with the angle grinder. I'll see if I can set up the camera on the tripod and you can take a look at it. And so more or less that's what it looks like after you use that, sand this fiberglass with something like a power tool. It just gets everywhere, but it does a quick job. You know, you don't have to sit there for 5 minutes to take off a 1/4 inch of material. Alright, and as you can see when we have it mocked up, there's a pretty good gap there. So I'm going to get inside this bumper piece and start to sand it so it'll be more flush like the other side. Alright, so I just finished sanding down this piece. I mean, it still looks the same. I didn't take too much off. Again, just reiterating, you don't want to rush this. There's no reason to, unless you're like prepping for a show or something. But you know, just take your time. It'll ultimately save you time because you have to do less work if you do it right the first time. So yeah, I'm going to test fit this and I bet it'll be, you know, spot on 100%. Alright, so again, I hate bodywork so much. This is why I'm just like covered from head to toe, all over my arms in fiberglass. It's just everywhere. But yeah, like I said, you know, I trimmed that piece a little bit and it's right on the money, just like the other side. So once again, just like the other side, I'm going to wet sand these. And then set them aside for paint, and go ahead and move on to the rear section. That way I can get the rear ready for paint. Alright guys, oh my goodness, what is on my forehead? So I am super dirty and I feel like this video is getting repetitive, so I'm going to call it right there. Again, you know, you want to take your time with this, you want to do it slowly, you want to take as little material off as possible, test fit, and you know, eventually everything will fit correctly. Unless you have a really trash kit. I've seen some kits where no matter what you do, they just don't fit, and you know, it's unfortunate, but whatever. So I'm gonna go ahead and do the rears. I'm not gonna film it, and then I'm gonna test fit it, put everything aside for paint. So I guess this will be another like 2 or 3 part video series. The third part being maybe cutting and final assembly after we get it back from paint. We do plan on using riv nuts with some pretty nice, like, professional hardware. So maybe the last video will be like a full install after paint. There is going to be some drilling and riv nut installing that takes place there. So with that being said, have a good night and see you guys later.